He was reincarnated with negative 255 RES, but he gains over 100 billion step points, which makes him stronger than a god in his new world. The story begins with a man named Oka who knows he's ugly, but he's learned to accept his appearance and live a happy life. But one day a girl falsely accuses him of harassing her, so he denies the accusation and tries to leave, but he stumbles and scatters his shopping bags. Everyone sees the adult games he bought, so they think he's guilty, and Oka realizes that the world isn't fair to ugly people like him, so he pleads guilty to avoid further humiliation. But the judge fines him 300,000 yen and he gets fired from his job. A few years later, we learned that the woman who framed him was arrested because she falsely accused ugly men of harassing her. But she only received probation since she was a minor. Oka was traumatized by the false accusation and he couldn't get a job, so he became a shut-in who lived with his parents. In the present, we see Oka surfing the net, and he comes across a mysterious post about the sudden disappearances in the city. He notices another post, which warns people to use their bonus points carefully, or they won't be able to return to their world. He dismisses it as a joke, but since he has nothing else to do, he decides to follow the guide to be reincarnated. He suddenly gets a notification, which asks him if he's ready to proceed with a new life, but it warns him that he would need to sacrifice half his lifespan to return. He thinks it must be a virus, but he clicks next anyway, and a character creation form appears. He sets his looks to the lowest value possible, but he realizes that he gained bonus points for doing that, and he sees that he can add special notes, but instead of writing something positive, he decides to reduce his earnings to 0 and make himself suffer if he ever touches a woman. He gathers over 100 trillion bonus points, but before he can use them to improve his attributes, he suddenly runs out of time and he's teleported to the other world. The next day, Oka wakes up in his new body, and he soon meets other people who follow the same ritual to get reincarnated. Oka notices a boy named Seiji who's talking to the girls, but Oka isn't interested in forming friendships, so he starts searching for useful items. He finds a coin, but it magically disappears when he tries to pick it up, so he remembers how he had set his income rate to 0. After gathering all the starter items, everyone distributes them equally, but Saji realizes that they only have 7 coins in total, which makes the girls wonder if someone took one of them. He asks Oka about it, and he's disappointed that they don't trust him, but he knows that he can't have any money, so he tells them they can have his share. Saji thinks they can't exclude him like that, but the girl named Seka thinks it makes sense, because he's the only one who didn't find coins. Oka wonders if he can have the axe instead, and Sage warns him that he'll fail again if he keeps showing off. But Oka has no idea what he's talking about. So he apologizes as he explains that he was talking about himself, because his selfish behavior caused problems in his previous life. They play rock, paper, scissors to decide how the weapons will be distributed, and Oka ends up with the club, while Seiji takes the axe. He offers a handshake of friendship, but Oka refuses to make the same mistakes from his past life, so he decides to go solo instead. Seiji shows everyone the map, and suggests heading to the nearby town of Iria, but Oka only decides to go with the party so that he can leave them halfway through the journey. As they open the door, they're shocked to see a goblin waiting outside, but Saji kills it with his axe. They notice multiple goblins coming towards them, so Saji tells the girl named Ritsu to help him fight them, and he asks Oka to protect Seka as she loads her arrows. He's impressed that Saji is leading from the front, but he notices Saka struggling to tie her bowstring, so he wonders why she chose the bow when she had other options. A goblin suddenly attacks him and Seiji tells him to handle it, but even a direct hit from his club is unable to cause any damage. Seka is surprised by how weak he is, and the goblin hits his legs. So he falls to his knees. He wonders why he's so weak, because he should have a lot of bonus points, but he remembers how he ran out of time during character creation, so he wasn't able to improve his stats. He's angry at his bad luck, and he takes out his frustration on the goblin, hitting it with all his might. He manages to defeat it, and he gets a notification that he has leveled up, but he's surprised that he's already at level 31. So he checks his attributes, and he notices that he has an experience multiplier of 10,000, which explains why he leveled up so fast. Saji and Ritsu also level up, and they decide to upgrade their stamina and strength, while Oka adds 1 trillion points to each of his stats. He suddenly starts glowing with divine energy, as the system declares him an absolute god, and he realizes that another goblin is hitting him, but because of his new powers, it feels like just a tap. He decides to test his new strength and gently flicks its head, but it sends the goblin flying, so he realizes he's become OP. He notices that Seika still can't string her bow, so he decides to help her, and he lies that he's suffering from bowstringing syndrome, so he'll die if he doesn't draw the string. She decides to give it to him, and she's impressed as he quickly ties it, using his maxed-out dexterity skill, so she tells him to take the first shot. He carefully grabs the arrow, making sure he doesn't accidentally touch her, and he activates his skill called the Ultimate Destruction Shot. He fires the arrow toward the goblins, but it flies to the sky, so he wonders if he missed. But a magic circle suddenly appears and a dragon comes out of it, eliminating the goblins in its path. Everyone's amazed by his power, and Seika wonders how he did that. So Oka makes an excuse that he was in the archery club. She offers to handle the rest of the goblins, so he returns her bow, and as more goblins arrive, Seki tells her to cover them. So she fires her arrows, but they all fly over the goblins' heads. And she's disappointed as she runs out of arrows. So Oka creates new arrows using his craftsmanship skill, and tells her that she dropped them. She quickly picks them up and starts shooting again. But she once again misses all of her targets. Seiji and Ritsu eliminate all the remaining goblins, but Oka worries about Seika, so he decides to stick with them until they reach their destination. They soon make it to Iria, and they notice a hamburger restaurant, which makes them happy, but as everyone goes in, Oka decides to leave, because he thinks he needs to maintain his isolated lifestyle. He sits near a fountain, but he suddenly feels hungry because he doesn't have money to buy food. He's surprised as Sega rises and he falls into the water. So she asks him if he's okay. But she gives him a burger, telling him it's a token of appreciation for stringing her bow earlier. And he's surprised by how kind she is. His stomach growls loudly, and she realizes that he can't afford food since he's broke. But he doesn't like her calling him poor. He goes to grab the burger, but his fingers accidentally touch her, and he feels an electric shock as he loses HP, while the burger smashes against the wall. He receives 50 trillion damage from the brief contact, and he's still processing his loss. But he notices Seika crying because she thinks he rejected her gift. He uses his corporate communication skills and tells her she's so beautiful that his hands were trembling, but he would still happily eat that burger. Seika gives him her other burger, as she apologizes for making him nervous, and he realizes that it's her lunch. But she assures him it's fine since she's wealthy, and reminds him that he helped her earlier by tying her bowstring and giving her arrows. Oka happily eats the burger and thinks he owes her, so he decides to stick with the group until he can pay her back, and puts his plan to go solo on hold. Seika and Oka visit the weapons store, and Seika tries to buy multiple bundles of arrows, but the shopkeeper tells her they only have a limited stock. Oka notices that her bag is already full of arrows, and even though he could easily create more for her, he can't give them to her without causing suspicion. Seiji and Ritsu soon arrive, and they mention that they found a new inn, but Oka decides to just sleep in the park. Seika thinks he's doing it since he's poor, so she offers to pay his bill, but he doesn't want to be a burden to her. She becomes emotional thinking he must hate her, but he tells her that isn't the case, so she grabs his arm and leads him to the inn. He notices that he isn't getting any damage, because she's touching him through his clothes instead of his skin. He thinks that she's always taking him with her, but he can't leave her alone, because she's so innocent that people might hurt her. At the end, Seiji plans their finances. While Oka worries that he can't keep owing favors to Seika, he realizes that he must find a way to earn money, despite his curse of zero income, or else he would be forced to return to the world they left behind. The next morning, Oko brings breakfast for everyone, which surprises them, so he lies that a kind person gave it to him. Seika notes that begging isn't good, and he should ask her if he ever needs money, so he appreciates the kind offer. We learn that he actually bought the breakfast by crafting arrows and taking them to the weapons store, but since he can't earn money, he traded them for food. He knows that he sold them at a loss, but he's still glad that he could repay Seika's kindness. After breakfast, Seiji tells them that they should prepare for their next adventure, and Seika thinks they should explore the city first. But he mentions that they need to find a good source of income, and notes that there's a cave near the city that they should explore, which excites Seika, but Ritsu wonders if it's safe. A man named Shiro suddenly interrupts them, and asks them if they're heading to the Arga cave, because they'll need an expert navigator to explore it. He reveals that he's also a reincarnated adventurer, which alarms Oka, but Shiro is surprised by how ugly he is. He shows them an item which can help them get a discount at the end.